that we exit executive session.
We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Sorry, now we can go back.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Commissioner Merger. So Brandy maintains a spreadsheet.
And let's introduce her on the record.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandy.
I'm Brandy Peck. I'm an assistant to the TCA. I've been with Bannock County for 25 years.
Okay, thank you.
And I handle all of the conflict stuff that comes through our office. So whenever the public defender's office conflicts a case out, they send me that case information. So every couple of days I get a list from them of every case that they've sent out and who they sent it to. And I keep a running spreadsheet of that every single month and then every single year.
So in every conflict is okayed by the judge? Or is it the office that conflicts them?
The public defenders file a motion and order requesting to be able to conflict the case, and the judge signs the order allowing them to conflict it, yes.
So then, do you email, how then is the conflict notified?
Miranda, is the person doing it over at the PD's office right now. She emails them and puts the file into their Dropbox.
How does she determine who gets the next one up?
So we use like a rolling list. She also goes through a conflict checking process because she has to look at prior cases of that individual, co-defendants of that individual, victims of that individual, and see who has represented those people so that we can find an attorney who doesn't also have conflicts.
So it's when she emails, then we need to have a CNC email to the commissioner's office, because then we know who's been assigned. Because right now, we have no idea.
And there's probably a cleaner way than having you guys getting an individual email. Because there's another part of it. When the conflict when we can't find a contract conflict that is clean, then that's where we're hiring an hourly. We're seeking an hourly to come on and take that case. And in that circumstance, it's Brandy, and this is kind of the cold calling, where we're just trying to find an attorney who can take a non-contract hourly case. So you'll have, so what Brandy does is she maintains a spreadsheet that'll have all the contract conflict cases assigned. So see, Bob has this one, Craig has this one, Lagus has this one. And then Brandy, she updates that from Miranda. And then when we get the non-contract conflict hourlies, when we find an attorney to take those cases, then Brandy adds those names on it. So probably the easiest way is to share that spreadsheet that's being constantly updated between Brandy and Miranda, whether it's with Braden or whomever. So you could see a running list of all the contract conflict appointments and all the non-contract conflict appointments. And we usually it's the case number that's on there.
I have the defendant's name, the case number, and who we gave it to, the date that we gave it to them.
So you'd have full visibility and hear all not only the cases that the contract folks have, but also the cases that the non-contract folks have. It'd be the biggest, it'd be the most complete picture.
Sometimes there's a second conflict too, because you may have a conflict attorney that has a case for a period of time, and then maybe down the road they don't get along with the defendant and the defendant wants to fire them and the judge allows them to fire them. And so then we conflict again, and that's done by me, rather, because the PD's office is now out of the picture, so that's us doing that.
The PD's office doesn't get to choose any of the criteria when they want to conflict the case out. Is that?
Yes.
They have their own criteria.
Yeah, they find something if a public defense attorney has a case, and say they're representing person X, and another case gets assigned to him, the person X was a victim of the new person's, they can't represent them both. So
Right, but they can't just choose different criteria.
Well, you still have to follow, it's judicial canons that will constitute, but it's not.
Rules of professional
Rules
conduct.
of professional conduct, thank you. And so as long as it falls under those rules, but those rules are open to interpretation and where we're at. And that's why I say is how it's interpreted.
But workload shouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's where we're going to have a discussion of, okay, so we get these in, what are we going to do for the next 2 years?
So we can immediately, and depending on how frequently you want to get it, we can get that spreadsheet to the county, to the commission. So
Well,
we can-
I think on a monthly basis.
Well, Excel has a thing that you can share it live.
Sure,
so-
Yeah.
if we want to put it in a shared folder and just have it live in the shared folder, then anytime you want to look at it.
And you can, I think you can even go in there and just make sure we have read writes. We don't want write, we don't want to be able to write and mess it up. We just want to be able to read it so we can go through and verify as that goes and does that.
So the question that we're trying to answer with sharing this spreadsheet is what?
The number of cases that we haven't been able to
If we have to
identify,
go
in my
to-
opinion,
Yeah,
is one of the big ones.
Okay, so then,
And then-
what do we do with that information?
so then if we go to hourly, we have to be able to verify that that's a case that we're paying for.
Right?
And that's
Okay.
that's the main mechanism behind it, is if somebody sends us a bill and says they have these 6 cases, because we're gonna ask by case number and who it is, that's the problem that we have right now, is we don't know who we're paying for.
And
And we'll be able to
I
track
get
each
that,
conflict attorney's number of
but-
cases and
I can't help but go back to a discussion we had about an hour ago about
Efficiencies?
efficiency, and are we doing all this work for what might amount to $5,000?
The problem is if we go to hourly, we have to track who we're paying to and why, just for accounting purposes, because
Right.
this is the problem that I have. I'm not gonna pay anybody any money, and you can, unless you can tell me the service that you've provided. Well, I represented these 6 cases. Well, how do we know that? We don't have a list that, who's the person for auditing, for them to go back and compare, yes, this is Brandy's list that has this. We need to have access to that list then, because when that invoice comes in, it has to be coded. Braden's gonna have
Cross-check 'em.
it's gonna have to go through and say, yes, this is a valid case that we're paying, or no, it's not.
And I don't disagree with that at all, at all.
And that's just the short,
Because-
To me, it's a two-step deal that we're doing here. Because one is we find out how many conflicts we have, and then we go to the public defense office and we say, how many cases are you guys handling? And what's the comparison? And why are we conflicting? I think that's a conversation we have to figure out, is the methods that we're using to conflict correct or not? And here's some data that proves,
Because it's been such a gray area.
nobody
well,
knows.
here's some data that proves
and are they
you're
counting the
conflicting
conflict cases
2/3 of
too?
your cases.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I definitely think the expectation should be going forward, if anybody's on our hourly provides us, like Stratton did, that detail of a report, so we can
Well,
match it up.
Because
totally agree
because I
with
think that that's where, like you said, then we know, hey, yeah, you billed us for $3,800. Yep, that looks good. You billed us for 5,000, and we got cases are on here or stuff that these cases you're billing us for. We better be able to go back and spot check and go back and say, okay, we were billed for this case, and they said they did this action. We should be able to go in then on a spot check and say, hey, could you pull this case and see that there was this motion to suppress or motion to, whatever. Did they actually do this?
And that's the level of detail that I have a little bit of concern over, because we're gonna have, let's just say Braden's gonna be doing it for now, we're gonna have a non-legal mind looking at this and going, okay, well, we have a motion to suppress here for an hour and here for 3, is he gonna recognize the difference? Or why are you in court for 3 hours this day and 1 hour this
I
day?
think that's a great question for Assistant Civil Deputy Prosecuting Attorney to look at and evaluate.
Pointed at Alan, because I'm going straight upstairs.
That is going to be, and I think there's opportunity cost to managing this.
And that's what I'm looking at, because I totally
I wasn't
agree
even
we
going
need
that.
to.
I was just looking at like, hey, make sure we have the right case number, the right person, and you're billing it to the correct one, and we spot check them every now and then to make sure that
And
they're
I want to
good.
be
No.
just upfront and make sure, that when we talk about this, I mean, I can't see a scenario where this is not going to cost more money.
Right.
And it might be the completely right thing to do. I mean, it's kind of like our conversation with Bonneville County and how they approach their Office of Conflict. Saving $1 wasn't why they did it. I mean, they did it because they thought it was the right thing to do and were litigation adverse and wanted to build this system. I fully expect even in the period of time that we're looking, that maybe we might have this brief hourly surge as contracts are going down, it's going to result in more cost than what we're paying out in those contracts. Brandy and I were chatting just real quick about how much you're going to have visibility on that spreadsheet. There is those reopened cases that aren't going to be on that spreadsheet.
We'd have to figure out how to look at that.
Can you add an extra field at the end that says reopen yes, no?
I don't know about them is the problem.
Oh.
So what this scenario is, the person gets a brand new felony, and the PD's office conflicts it out to say Craig Parrish. Well, once Craig Parrish starts handling that case, he finds out that that person also has 2 other cases that they're currently on probation for. This new charge is going to create a probation violation in both of those cases, and those 2 cases are going to reopen and need handled as well. Craig would do that as well because they're going to make a joint resolution of those 3 cases.
Yeah.
So I don't know about those 2 cases to even have them on my spreadsheet. I know that I assigned him a brand new case, but that may mean he actually got 3 cases.
Well, then it comes
That's
back,
when we look at the invoice.
you want to get paid.
And you could look at that
Should have that
invoice
on.
with that case number of the PV, and we would have to have enough knowledge to know, okay, he was appointed on case A, it triggered PVs in B and C, and then looking in B and C and say, yes, indeed, there were PVs filed in there.
That would be something that we could ask the conflicts to do in a contract, to say include any PVs or things that you're taking on in addition to the case you've been assigned.
I'm going to say something, and I don't want Jeff, don't throw nothing at me about making government more difficult or making a new system to create anything. But we have this great tool right now.
I'm ready.
We have this great tool right now in the civil defense. We have the civil defense request system that we do for the county, which was Adam made it. It literally was a drag and drop. And alls it is, hey, here's this, who's the case assigned to, this is what's going on. It sounds like that instead of using Excel spreadsheets and 14 different things, it might be where it's just, hey, Adam, can you just tweak it to where, because then you guys have access to it. And anytime you assign anybody a case, it goes live and it brings it back in, just like in our civil defense system.
I would be all for that because, again, I think we're at the precipice of this where we don't have data, and so we don't really know the right questions to ask per se. And so I'm willing to go down the road and maybe complicate things for a little bit because we don't know.
Well, we're going to have 2 years of having to deal with this.
Right, but I mean, I guess I'm looking at,
Yeah.
okay, for the next 6 months, can we
Yeah.
try this spreadsheet or your suggestion?
We can sure throw it to Adam and have him look at it and say, hey, does this fit nicely or do you?
Because I don't know how to, and that's the thing that I like about like their system. I had read writes when we were bringing it online, and then I took my read writes away once they started the cases because there could possibly be a case that involves a commissioner, so we don't look at it. But they can pull reports and see who's doing what, how many people are assigned to what. I mean, it's kind of like the GIS request system. It's the same system that we build it out of, and you can show all the data, who's working on what, where's. I mean, you can populate it with as many fields as you want. It's just a generic. It's basically a work order system is all it is.
I was just, as you were talking earlier, my mind went down a path like that. I didn't know we had something similar that had already been created.
Yeah, that's the civil attorney system, and I mean, it would probably make it way easier than, I mean, you can, but you literally just click on it and say, this person, this thing, this, and you can generate an email or you can generate an automated response. It's not it's probably the simplest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's kind of funny. It's like a very basic program, but the data that it generates off the backside, because it shows you exactly who's doing what. And if you can bring by participant and you can say, Brian Trammell on this one, and it'll tell you every single request that's run to him and who's doing it. And you can make as many fields as you want by name. You can probably add name, case number, And so then when the guys and gals over at Public Defense have Craig Parrish get those other 2 cases reopened and they have to do something with it, that's when they would just go in there and say, reopen, and it would bring them back in place.
The problem is I'm not sure that there's any of us that are doing that if those cases reopen because a PV's filed, and then maybe just the judge's clerk adds Craig onto those cases, and that's how that happens.
And so this might be a system where you have a couple people have access to it, where you're going to have to, and we're going to have a conversation with the judges and say, hey, we have, and this is the problem we run into, is the reason we have to track this is once you go into hourly, for government financial accounting standards, which these guys have to deal with, and the auditor's office, I can guarantee if we do not have a case to back up what we're paying for, we're going to get hit in our audit, and it's going to be shown as a liability and a failure to comply with government auditing standards, and that's going to be a big ding for the county that we are not doing this correctly.
I think there is we can sure figure out at that level how to track that, and whether it's reported by the hourly attorney that I've picked up these 2 on the reopen, and then we we trust but verify.
Yeah.
Because then we can look and see that how it's tied together on the same defendant. We can navigate that. But I wanted to throw out, just so I'm tracking of what we need to do on our end. We need to share with Braden our tracking sheets and follow up with a conversation about, is there a way to leverage existing shared systems to make it a better way to do it. The other kind of thread is moving forward with and insert the magic language of the request for letters of interest,
Yep.
request for qualifications.
RFQ with
from attorneys.
Shandy could probably do that fairly quickly, because that's a fairly simple one, actually.
And then we make sure we know where to point all this in terms of financially. Is it just going to be monies going towards unfilled contracts, or however that the county will process those pending whatever happens when we implement the changes to the public defense system?
And I think that you could do, I mean, an RFQ for basic legal services. I mean, that's a fairly simple one, and we just need to get that
And then
pushed in. We could have it probably for Tuesday for publication and leave it open for a week.
is our intent to move the conflicts to the hourly? Because we have what, right now? we
I think we're
potentially
gonna.
have two
I think
more?
we're gonna have to, because the problem is we losing those two. We had virtually none apply for the last time we had it open.
Correct.
That's what I was
I
worried about.
don't think we're gonna get. I don't see that. All we're gonna say is we're gonna put this out. Do you want? And the request for qualification is gonna be: do you want to be put on the list to be contacted at $90 an hour for the county? If so, these are the requirements you need to have. Please make response to the Bannock County Commissioner's Office, Wave Shannon Crystal, and you just leave that open permanently. That's always there, and you just keep adding attorneys. So when you guys have to have an attorney that pops up, I'm sure we could set around, however you round robin. Hey, here's your 20 attorneys. You can just start calling. They've already agreed to take a case if you call them at $90 an hour.
I think that $90 an hour figure is higher than any of the other counties that we checked with in the beginning, wasn't it?
It's 85, 90
Higher
to.
than that? Who was higher?
Yeah.
Kootenai?
Well, that was the other part that.
Because there was only one, right?
Is going back to the 80J about amending the order that sets it from 85 to 90, but just for Bannock, because the other counties.
We can't get attorneys to take stuff in Bannock County right now, and so if you set it at 90, it'd make your job easier, is if they know that. And so this way, if Shannon can have this set together, where you have a constant list of, hey, here's 20 attorneys, where you just call and it's not a discussion, it's, yes, we're sending you a case because you've asked to be on the list. So, but we do have to have that accounting mechanism. That's where I see this becoming a nightmare, is all of a sudden you have a bunch of attorneys that are all submitting and trying to sort out of how this is going and where the money's going to go.
How many denials before they're taken off the list? So if Brandy calls them and
That's the other
she's
thing.
calling this person, and 5 times in a row they said, actually, no, I can't right now. Do you just take them off the list? What do you think, Brandy?
Yeah.
How many times?
Probably 3.
Okay.
Probably, yeah.
There you go, 3.
Makes your job easy.
And if they want to get back on, they can resubmit. And I don't know, but that'll be a work in progress, probably from Brandy's success rate.
There will need to be some type of a review to make sure that the attorney that applies is qualified. I'm certain that the ones that they're currently working with would pass just fine, but if we have an unknown name or something.
I think that's
But they're gonna submit an application.
Right.
and that goes.
So if they don't meet the qualifications on the application, then
Can you guys look at that and just say, yes, this is somebody that's qualified or not?
Yeah, basically, we're looking for someone who's licensed to practice in Idaho.
Can you guys verify that for us? 'Cause we
Licensed to
can.
practice in Idaho, yeah, we
Yeah,
can
we can
verify
verify
that they are
that.
licensed to practice.
Whatever system you're doing right now, we just need you to do that for us, because we don't know what that is.
We're someone who is currently licensed.
Licensed attorney,
It's pretty easy.
that's all we need.
Hey, you know what's funny though? We just need to check though. Somebody needs to check, and that's.
Make sure they have a driver's license.
Hey, I may not even require a driver's license.
It's a bad discussion from earlier.
It was a previous discussion.
We appreciate the commission helping us problem solve. We just want to make sure we're able to maintain our constitutional responsibilities and that folks are able to access indigent defenses. We see our system in flux right now. So I think we've got a way forward, and we'll follow up on our end, and appreciate your willingness to come up with solutions.
Christy, we're gonna need to know how much money is available with, if those contracts are gonna terminate.
231,000?
Is right now.
How much?
About
241.
230.
Well, yeah, 230 in the contracts, and then we had about 10,000 in the overflow, so.
Yeah. Well,
But-
without Stratton's coming through, right?
Yeah, but what we'll do is we'll do a projection. Well, are we gonna keep all the contracts, or are we gonna do everything narrative?
Everybody
That's
that's,
the question I just
And-
was asking.
Until they submit their resignation, we have
Okay.
contract.
Then I'll get with Braden and we'll project out
Okay.
based on the current contracts.
I bet we see a bunch of resignations based on people
Probably.
reading the discussion today.
Okay.
But they gotta give us 30 days, right?
do you know,
Okay. Well, we can play that game.
Well, we're gonna sign one today, that's all. With that, any other questions?
Appreciate your
I
time.
think so.
Thank you.
Thanks again,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Because we are in a talking about conflicts right
public
now,
attorneys.
I think we can okay
Um,
the contract.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
there is a contract that's waiting for public defense to come in, and I don't know, Alan, we don't have it's the contract for public defender that we're waiting to come back in. We need to sign it. We haven't got it yet. We're asking on a question of start date. So I would just move, I guess it would be a motion, that on receipt of that contract, as long as that attorney has signed it, that they would be allowed to go ahead and start, and then the signature of that contract would be ratified at the next available commissioners meeting. Is that motion out of order? Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize the contract for public defense that we are waiting to return, that as soon as it is received with the signature of the willing participant, that they'd be allowed to start immediately for the county, and that contract be ratified at
Let
the
me
next
ask-
available meeting.
Can we sign it now, send it to them, and then ratify the contract upon receiving it back?
We would have to, well, if we sign it first and send it, then we probably have to agendize that. And if we are just saying that we're authorizing her that as soon as she comes back with the sign to start and we'll ratify,
The start date will be,
the start date as soon as it's received.
As soon as it's
It's
received.
received,
Okay.
and then what we're saying is we will ratify and apply our signatures at the next available meeting.
okay.
And my only question is, do we need to have a name on that, or are we okay without? In the motion, do we need to have a name for the contract specifically?
Juvenile contract.
Okay, the juvenile
It's the
contract?
juvenile conflict attorney's contract,
Okay,
so amended.
so, okay,
Friendly amendment.
yes, friendly amendment.
Thank you. I'll take that friendly
Nancy,
amendment.
do you have all that?
Thank you.
We have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right,
That was a heavy lift.
we can move forward with that.
Thank you.
All right,
Back to the other one.
I don't know if I can even speak anymore. My head hurts from listening to that. Braden Clayson, Chief of Staff. I have a budget sheet here that Christy and I have put together in preparation for getting the department heads ready for our modified zero-based budgeting that we're doing this year. We actually met with the sheriff's office and kind of did a first, well, they were our guinea pigs, really. And we made a couple of adjustments to the sheet. Commissioner Huff was there. He approved of kind of the process we came up with, and in addition to this sheet, we will also be sending an email out to kind of get the department heads ready for Christy and I when we come over and go through this sheet with them, just to try to make the cage match a cleaner event when we sit down and actually go through all of our budgets together, knowing that there's an expectation that everybody comes in with as many cuts as they can.
you guys went and experimented with it?
It was a great discussion. We were there for what, an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and had a great discussion. And I thought Christie and Braden were well prepared and answered the questions and the concerns that the sheriff had. So I think where we're at is a good spot.
Good.
So, send it out.
Yep.
All right.
Let's get working on it. Okay?
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
All right. Come on up. You can come up too, Scott, or you can sit back there.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
He's like, I'm not coming up there. These guys are on a roll today. I'm not putting.
I've been up here once today.
I'm not stepping into the fire.
I'm gonna unroll this thing. So Dan Kendall, Maintenance Department this time. Here to talk about the Maintenance Department budget. So I've been working really hard on the city works and making good progress and turning my focus more towards the budget. So my concerns are that, as we all know, prices of everything going up. It's looking like our equipment costs are going 30 to 40% higher, and building materials probably more than that. So to keep up with those rising costs, we need to increase the B budget, and so I'm trying to, keep the budget number the same, the total, and so I need to be more efficient with the A budget, and that's what I wanted to discuss with you guys today.
Okay, and you want to talk about personnel, basically.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and go into executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into executive session under Idaho Code 74, 206, prim A and B.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Moser,
Yes.